As President Donald Trump surges in Florida and Michigan, does Joe Biden think he can win by not campaigning? Hello, this is Robert Romano, Vice President of Public Policy with Americans for Limited Government, dailytorch.com. Hit that subscribe button. Today we're going to be talking about Joe Biden. He doesn't really seem to want to campaign all that much to become president. And if he's not willing to ask for your vote, well, why should you vote for him? And I think President Trump is stepping up his campaign appearances, and he is very serious about getting reelected. And I think that President Trump's energy and Joe Biden's lack of enthusiasm, both for running and from his supporters, could prove to be determinative of who wins the election in November. I think that President Trump's going to pick up more votes by doing these in-person appearances and gathering crowds, and safely doing so. You see a lot of people wearing masks that are worried about the coronavirus. But Joe Biden doing this all virtually, not really having that many campaign stops, and limiting his appearances, I think it's going to come back to bite him. His campaign is waging a virtual campaign, so they're not door knocking, and I think that could prove to be quite determinative in November. And some of the latest polling out of Trafalgar Group, as well as Washington Post, ABC News, which shows that President Trump is rising in states like Michigan and Florida. And so let's take a look at this. Former Vice President Joe Biden must believe he is safely in the lead because on September 24th, he had no appearances, and neither did Kamala Harris. And the Joe Biden off the campaign trail problem, that's the 9th day in September where he's done that. And again, if you're not going to show up to campaign, people might not show up to vote. And I think the Democrats should be really worried about turnout right now, that could actually be a big problem. Does Joe Biden think he can win without aggressively campaigning? Now, Biden could be making the same mistake as Hillary Clinton made in 2016. She thought she was safely in the lead, and a complacent Democratic machine watched Trump shock the world in one of the most stunning upsets in political history. Clinton was supposed to win. She was leading all the state polls, 538. Nate Silver thought that meant that she was going to win, 85% certainty, 90% certainty. At some points during the election, it was well over 90% certainty that Clinton was going to beat President Donald Trump. And only some late polls, like from Trafalgar Group, showed that Trump was actually ahead in Michigan as well as Pennsylvania. And Trump won the election. Trafalgar got it right. And now Trafalgar and Robert Cahaley, chief pollster there, who talks a lot about social desirability bias, how it's really hard to poll President Trump's supporters because they don't want to let people know that they're supporting Trump, but that they do support him. And he manages to kind of get through this filter, and he finds that President Trump is leading Joe Biden in the state of Michigan, once again, 46.7% to 46%. And if that's what Trafalgar and Robert Cahaley are reporting, I think you gotta kind of take it really seriously. I think that the Biden campaign does take this seriously. I think they're worried about this number. Here's Cahaley on Twitter stating, "Our new Trafalgar Group 2020 election Michigan battleground state poll conducted September 20 to 22 shows a razor-thin lead for President Trump, 46.7 to 46. And that's, for the Trump campaign, that's really, really good news. And for Biden, he's actually picked up a little ground since the last poll in Michigan, but Trump is maintaining his lead there. So that's got to be a little worrisome there. Meanwhile, in the state of Florida, the latest Washington Post ABC News poll shows that President Trump is leading by 4 points. President Trump has jumped out to a big lead there, 51% to 47% amongst likely voters. You'll notice that it's actually 48-47 in favor of Biden when you do registered voters. But not everyone who's registered is frankly a likely voter, and you really need to consider who's going to turn out in the election based upon who they are, past performance, things like that. Are they a newly registered voter? That can also be determinative. Newly registered voters are going to be more likely to vote in many likely voter polls. And so I think that you want to take that into consideration. And again, Trump's up by 4 points in Florida. That's really bad news for the Biden campaign. And Trump is getting a major boost from the economy, where in the poll, ABC News, Washington Post, 52% to 41% say that Trump over Biden should be trusted on handling the economy. And I say that's little wonder when you consider that 13.8 million jobs have been recovered in the U.S. economy since labor markets bottomed in April from the state-led coronavirus pandemic shutdowns. 25 million jobs were lost, but almost 14 million have been recovered. We've gone from 133.4 million to 147.3 million. And so that's just great news. that shows that President Trump has got a lot of momentum here. And in the past month, we've gone from 13.8 million Americans on unemployment down to 12.2 million. So another 1.5 million Americans have come off unemployment in the past month. That will surely build on the 13.8 million jobs that have already been recovered, meaning the last monthly survey conducted by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which will be out the first week of October. And that's, the last report before Election Day is going to show perhaps another million or so, 2 million jobs have been added back into the economy. And so that's why Americans and Floridians are supporting President Trump over Joe Biden, because Trump's going to get the economy safely reopened. Joe Biden says he wants to shut it down again, if that's what the scientists are asking for. And as the data continues to pour in, President Trump, I think, will have a compelling story to tell about how he basically prioritized saving lives during the pandemic's height in the spring, and now he's looking to safely reopen the economy. Trump chose life at every turn. And if you look at his actions to close off travel from China and then Europe, and then to take the experts and the scientists very seriously, to ramp up ventilator production, to get a rapid testing solution into place, I think that President Trump has a very good story to tell, not only about the pandemic response, but also now he's focused on reopening the economy, safely reopening schools, and how essential that is to working families, including women in the workforce who were actually disproportionately kicked out of the labor force because of the pandemic shutdowns, because mothers had to stay home with their children who would otherwise be in school. So if you want to get the U.S. economy back on its feet, you got to get those schools reopened. And President Trump is talking about reopening schools and providing and conditioning federal funds on reopening. If you're going to get, say you're getting money for reopening and making the schools safe, you actually have to reopen. And I think that's an important criteria there, and it's going to create an incentive for schools to find a way to safely reopen. I mean, many schools right now are closed for special needs students and special education students. I think that's wrong. My family's personally affected by that, so I know a little bit about that, and it's just not right. They need to get those schools reopened, and that's going to help out working families, millions of them across the country. Over 55 million children go to school, and many of them are closed right now, 2/3, and I think that, again, that's wrong, and the economy's not going to get fully reopened until we get that under control. Now, adding to Democratic apprehension, President Trump is up to 52% in the Rasmussen Report's daily tracking poll on presidential approval. And he's showing some of the highest ratings since the presidential and party nominating conventions last month. And that's happening right at the right time for the president. And it's going to probably, help him to build momentum there. Added to Democrat worry, Florida Republicans are seeing a surge in voter registration. This is from Politico. Republicans have closed the traditional voter registration gap with Democrats to an historically small margin in Florida, triggering a wave of Democratic apprehension in the nation's biggest swing state. Top Florida Democrats and longtime activists have increasingly groused in private that they feel pressure from Joe Biden's campaign to refrain from door-to-door canvassing or holding voter registration drives due to potential spread of coronavirus. And now Republicans have narrowed the edge to just 185,000 voters, a gap of just 1.3 percentage points, according to data from the Florida Division of Elections released this week. They added 58,000 new voters, a 91% increase compared to August of 2016. Just in the month of August. And so I think that President Trump has a lot of momentum there. And again, the secret of the Republican success is door knocking. While Democrats continue to run a virtual campaign fearful of the pandemic, Republicans are depending on in-person tactics, real rallies, and are showing real success with their voter registration surge. And I call that momentum. And taken together, you have Trump's doing well in the daily tracking polls. He's up in Florida. He's up in Michigan. And I think that you start to see the tale being told here, which is that President Trump is surging while Joe Biden is still hiding. Is he even going to show up for the debates? We'll find out. I think that it's kind of ridiculous that you think you can win an election just by, virtually coasting. I mean, isn't that what Hillary Clinton did? Isn't that why she lost? And again, it calls into question the risky strategy of the Biden campaign of locking up their candidate, cutting down the number of appearances, and riskiest of all, depending on mail-in ballots. Now, Republicans will have absentee ballots too. Everyone's going to have absentee ballots. But Democrats, 47% of Biden supporters say they're mailing it in compared to just 11% of Trump supporters. So what if they don't mail it in? What if not enough people apply for absentee ballots on the Democratic side? Will Democrats get the turnout that they're looking for and are going to need in order to oust an incumbent president? Incumbents do very well in America's presidential system. And if President Trump is going to get all his people to the polls and then everyone else is going to vote via absentee, Joe Biden has to mail in almost half of all of his ballots. I don't think all of his supporters are going to do that. So turnout could be a real problem for the Biden campaign. A couple of months ago, the Biden campaign was assured by national polls it was leading by double digits and coasting to an easy victory in November. Not unlike in 2016, Hillary Clinton, she assumed that she was in the lead, and it turned out not to be true. She needed to be in the Rust Belt, and she wasn't campaigning where she needed to be. And so maybe some of those lessons are learned, but not if Joe Biden's not going to, have rallies and do campaign stops, shake hands and kiss babies. I think that that's a real part of the retail political side of this, and the idea that they're going to mail in this entire election, 47% of their ballots, Democrat ballots, are going to have to be mailed in because Democrats say that they're staying home. Well, a certain percentage of those will fail to register for absentee ballots, and another percentage will simply fail to turn them in, and even more will fail to turn them in properly. And then you're going to be dealing with this in the courts. This is going to be election week, maybe month. You might not find out who won the election until December because of this situation with the pandemic. And if Joe Biden's afraid to campaign and his voters are afraid to vote, well, they might not just show up. And President Trump could actually win by a landslide just because of that. He told his people to go out and vote in person. Now, a number of them will vote by absentee ballot, but enough of them will show up that President Trump's going to appear to be safely ahead in November, and that lead could very well carry over into December, and President Trump could be reelected. And I'll leave you with the close here. So much for that. Biden now appears to be trailing in the crucial states of Florida and Michigan with more than a month to go. Here, the president's reelection campaign is not only showing resilience, but dominance as the energetic Trump steps up his campaign appearances, bringing his case for 4 more years to the American people. Now, as the nation's attention turns to the debates, the question will be whether Biden can build enthusiasm for his campaign or remind the country why he's been hiding in his basement this whole time. That's the commentary. This is Robert Romano, Vice President of Public Policy with Americans for Limited Government, dailytorch.com. Hit that subscribe button, ring the bell for notifications, and have a good day.